And even in calling a basketball game today has changed since 5 years ago or 10 years ago on television. There's now, close to 180 possessions in a game. The game's going back and forth like this, and so you're reverting to, hey, you're just staying up with the action, right? And each game has a rhythm to it. And the most important thing as a young announcer is to find that rhythm. Football is 25 seconds of fill and 5 seconds of chaos, right? First down and 10 from the 20-yard line, right? And you're fill it, right? And then it's, play Smith rolls out of the pocket for the Buffalo Bills, fires it incomplete to.
That's accurate. That's accurate. Buffalo.
Right. But it's going to bring up 2nd and 10, and then they show a replay. That's when the analyst typically jumps in. But then, hurry-up offenses have changed all of different scenarios and the rhythm of the game. But basketball, there's a rhythm to the game like hockey. Follow the basketball, follow the puck, right? And baseball is like you and me sitting here talking, but then swung on a deep fly ball. You got to be on it when those big moments happen. So I've always found it really challenging flipping, through different sports. I've called, as you well know, as you, Olympics. And it's fun to do different sports and figure out what the rhythm of the sport is when you call it.
I'm going to jump in quickly with one of the comments that came in while you were talking. It was just a moment ago. Somebody said that Matt's head is hidden behind the messages coming in. Now, I will admit, I am not an Instagram Live expert here.
What do you mean, like
to me?
Here?
No, it's like because they're all rolling in across your face as you're talking.
Yeah.
So that's not. There's nothing you can do about it. I think the only way around that is if I shut off comments, but I don't think that would be right to freeze out the comments. So folks, it is what it is. Maddie's going to have the scroll coming across his face unless somebody can tell me if there's a way to fix that. I don't know. Maddie, it's interesting you talk about and listen, you decide what you want to tell of the story. But when you were talking about how the game has changed, how the call has changed, just even in the last 5-10 years. I honestly don't even remember now if it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was. But you missed one game in New York right before tip-off. You weren't feeling well. You missed a broadcast. And it happened to be a Sportsnet game. I was doing sidelines that night. You were obviously calling the game with Leo as per usual. And I find out about 10 minutes before the game, you're calling the game. Matt's sick. He's not feeling well. You got to go. And here I am in the Mecca, MSG, and it's my first one on television because I've been doing the radio for, over a decade at that point. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. And I'll tell you, for a guy I did pre-af and post for 7 years. At that point, I've been on the radio call for over 10 years. We're talking 17, almost 20 years as a broadcaster. There is a massive difference, folks, massive difference in calling a radio game versus a TV game. Because I stepped in there and I thought I was doing pretty well in the first quarter. And the hate I was getting, and looking back, it was justifiable because I was doing a radio call. I was, it's Lowry over to DeRozan, back over to Lowry, and I'm giving every single detail, and people are just shut up. We got the pictures. We just want to watch. You're talking too much. And I really had to scale back like 75% in the second half, to your point, to let the broadcast breathe, to let people watch the pictures, to let it unfold in front of them, and to know when to pick my spots, but then even more so, set up my analyst and let him do his job. And I'm just there to traffic cop it and jump in when need be. And it was a learning experience on the fly for me, just in that moment where you're thinking, holy crap, the spotlight's on. And I remember at halftime thinking, wow, I just dropped the ball big time. And I had to scale it back and kind of pull it together again. And it's a craft. It's an art to put together what you do, what a lot of broadcasters do in terms of knowing when to pick your spots, knowing the proper cadence, knowing when to hit those highs, knowing when to stay low, because it's a much, much, much different call than on the radio where the audience is relying on you to give them every single detail and tell you when to be excited, even if it's in the first quarter, let alone in the dying seconds.
Well, first of all, you did a magnificent job because it's not easy because at the end of the day, you're stepping in 10, 15 minutes before the broadcast. And certainly, as you well know, that was not planned. We were at that time, now we do live pregame shows. We were taping at that time pregame shows. And during then, I just wasn't feeling well at all. And the lights on me and everything, and long and the short of it, was not. I wanted to do the game, but fortunately, the medical staff that was there was like, look, it's just not worth it, right? You need to, rest, and thankfully everything was okay. So it is different, and it's evolved, it's changed, and the broadcasts have. And then you balance in your producer talking to you, your director. In our case, John Russin as well, who does stats, because we don't have a statistician sitting next to us like most teams. He's in the truck, and so you could have three different voices, and then you're listening to your analyst, Leo or Jack. And so it takes a little bit of time to get used to all that. There's no question about it. And I always have said to people, the best training ground, I believe, is radio. We're actually seeing more now. TV guys go do radio events. It's very common in the U.S., right, where somebody that has been doing television, when you get to the final game, they'll, let's say another crew will do the Super Bowl, but the guy that has been doing TV now all of a sudden slides over and does a radio call. Wouldn't be on Super Bowl, but, very few can go back and forth. Kevin Harlan's brilliant at it.
Yeah.
Because radio to me is a great foundation, because as you said, you got to be descriptive. You got to be on it. You have to paint the picture. And then when you move to television, all you do is dial it back. Right. And I think from going to TV to radio, it's always harder to provide more than to just provide less, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've always found it, in talking to broadcasters, young broadcasters, hey, if you can get on radio, definitely do that radio, because then you can dial back some of the descriptions. But as we know, in television, you're still going to do that. But pictures always can tell a great story. And then it's really learning that in those big moments like Game 7, you make the call and then you allow the fans to see and hear the reaction of that. And it's, you lay out instead of talking over those moments. And I think that our crew has done such a great job. We've worked together for so long. Nothing needs to be said between myself, Jack, and Leo. We just feel those moments, allow those things to happen, and then on cue, they just know when to add in. And so it makes it, makes it seamless.
Couple of things here. I'm hoping that we're out of quarantine, out of isolation and social distancing sooner than later. But if this thing goes on for like 2-3 months, you're 1,000% coming back for episode 2, because we now have 14 minutes left, and we haven't even got to the Raptors championship and about 1,000 other things I wanted to bring up. So
somebody said I needed a haircut. I thought you were going there, like, hey, hopefully.
No, I wasn't going to buzz it. Listen, I'm jealous of that. There's a section back here that just doesn't get a whole lot, so I would take.
Should I use my sister's?
Hey, you want to go live with a haircut right now? Boost my ratings on this thing. But I was going to say, these Instagram lives, Maddie, they time out after an hour. And last night, we've been doing these Zoom chats, myself, you, Leo, Matt, Jack, Jonesy, Sherm. And they give us like a 10-minute warning, 5-minute warning. Last night, 30 seconds. It's like, you're done in 30 seconds. So it ended very abruptly. So I want to make sure we give ourselves enough time.
I can leave now.
No, trust me, you can't. I've asked 3 questions. You've carried this thing. I'm trying to even think now where I wanted to go with this. With due respect to Memphis and to Charlotte, I'm going to glaze over them and fast forward. You go from New York, you go to Memphis, to Charlotte, boom, to Toronto, and I'm going to glaze over the lean years. Because I said right before you came on, I don't know if you heard it, but before you actually came on and joined this thing, I said, it's crazy to me that you've been here for, 12 seasons now?
12 seasons.
It doesn't seem that long to me. And I think that just speaks to how quickly you've become just part of the culture with this team, where you've been here for half of the franchise's history. And there were some lean years when you first came. You weren't coming into like this playoff contending, championship contending team. You went through the lean years as well. But we got to give ourselves 10 minutes to talk about this past season. And in the midst of the playoff run, and I know you touched on this on the Zoom chat, the little video thing we've been doing for NBA TV Canada. But folks, in the midst of the playoff run last year, sitting in hotel bars and hotel lobbies with us, the crew, let alone on his own in the hotel room, and when he's back at home when we're doing home games, and prepping for games and prepping for what would turn out to be a championship run and a title run, Matt's studying all of the tests and all the online exams for his Canadian citizenship, he and his entire family, and we're doing quizzes together in hotel lobbies, and you became a Canadian about 10 months ago.
Yeah, so, we, back in 2008, I was offered the opportunity to come here. I've always loved the city, actually, and you know this. I have some cousins that live here. My wife has a cousin that lives here. My wife's originally from Chicago. My family originally from New York, and it just seemed like a great fit. And really, when we thought about our three boys, and my oldest son, Jack, and he has special needs, and we felt that there was just going to be some great opportunities here for him, and that certainly has been true. And so we loved it. I first came on a work permit. I quickly, once I was able to, we became permanent residents. And then when, the first chance we got to file to become Canadian citizens, we did. And that process takes a long time. And it just so happens that it comes up in the middle of the playoffs. And they're like, okay, show up at this time to take the test. And at this time, like, we're in the middle of the Philly series, and you have like a couple of weeks to prepare to take the test. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know if I'm going to be in town that day. Right. Yeah. And so if you recall, during the Milwaukee series, when my wife and I took the test, I actually didn't fly with the team. I flew commercial. It happened on a day that was in between games, and my wife got 20 out of 20 on the test. I got 19 out of 20. I missed one, and she'll never let me forget that. But it was just a wonderful moment. It's a wonderful country, as you well know. My boys have lived here, grown up here. We planned on being here for a long time, and just felt, a great connection to it. And I will say this, our oath happened between game 1 and game 2 of the NBA finals. And there was nothing like being there in that room, sharing that moment with 100 other people, 5 in my family. There's actually 99. There's 104 of us from 24 to 27 different countries. It was truly special. It was emotional. And just really cool. And I have a deep appreciation, obviously, as you well know. I think whenever I moved as a kid, and whenever we moved, my family, we always try to ingrain yourself into the culture of where you are. And there's just so many things about living here that just seemed right. And so an extension of that is becoming a citizen, and it's just been a wonderful, experience for us. And so it's just really cool to share that during this playoff run, to become a Canadian citizen.
Well, I know you have the picture in the locker room after the championship, soaked in the champagne, holding a beer, and you've got the Canadian flag as well. And I mean, that to me, folks, if you're watching Matty right now, you're following on Instagram. I'm sure you can scroll back and find that picture in June. We've got only probably about 6-7 minutes left here, and I don't control the time. So that's obviously a personal moment for you, as you said, coming between games 1 and 2 of the final. Again, you have to come on for a second part, because I feel like I'm not doing justice to everything. And it wouldn't be fair to say, I'm going to glaze over the Kawhi shot at Game 7. I'm going to glaze over double overtime against the Bucks. But so many moments, Matt, that stand out. Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So many moments that stand out over that whole thing, let alone the parade. And I know you weren't bringing this up, but I will. The masterful job that you did at Nathan Phillips Square as well, in the midst of the chaos where, the one moment nearly ruined an entire day, where I thought, from riding on the buses and looking out at the throngs of people, a moment I'll never forget. I saw little to no unrest, fighting, skirmishes, angst, nothing. I just saw a celebration and party from 2 million plus, almost 3 million people. And I hate that one incident and a couple of folks nearly soured the entire day. But the way that you held that together and calmed the entire gathering of people, let alone the city, was an incredible moment unto itself. But Maddie, where do you go from, and how do you try to encapsulate in 5 minutes, basically, everything that happened from 4 straight against Orlando, to Kawhi's winner, to 4 straight against Milwaukee, to winning 3 in Oakland, to the parade and everything that came to ultimately hoisting the trophy and being the reigning champs?
Well, first of all, I think one of the first pivotal moments of the postseason was after Game 1. I remember going and talking to Nick Nurse, and Nick and I have talked since, and he said, yeah, you can tell the story. I know he's kind of told the story, but we went and I spoke to him, and he had talked about how he really got after the team after Game 1 at practice. I think you recall later on in the postseason, Kyle talks about how Nick only got after him 2 times all year. Well, that was one of them. And I think that got them into that mindset of, hey, we're here to do bigger, better things. They go on to win 4 in a row. Philadelphia was a heavyweight fight. We've talked about it so often. And to me, the ability of Nick to match big for big, right, and go big, even though Serge and Mark hadn't played more than 31 minutes together during the regular season, and then you get the shot, one of the greatest shots of all time. And then everything was always living in the moment. There was always pieces to it. I always found it unique and interesting that Kawhi, who doesn't show emotion, allowed himself after Game 7. And he actually said, well, I've never hit that shot before. That shot's never been hit before. So I allowed myself to show emotion. It gives you kind of just a window into who he is and how controlled he is when he's out there on the court. And then leaving the Game 1 against the Bucks, I felt the Raptors were the better team. They're down 2-0, as we know. Kawhi gets asked, where are you going? And he goes, back to Toronto for Game 3. Double OT win. Game 6, you take it, 24 seasons in the making. And then here's, the series against the Golden State Warriors. And we already mentioned how after Game 2, what Kawhi said. And in the run that Kyle had in Game 6 to begin the game, 15 points in that first quarter, there were just so many different moments. And then, obviously, I think for me, when you think back about that shared experience with all the Canadians that were following it, not only here, but worldwide, because we heard from people worldwide, the 59 different official Jurassic Park watch parties throughout Canada, you really got a sense that it was just so much bigger than just the organization, the city. It was everyone, as you said, in your call, a city, a province, a country, and it truly was that. And, there's just so many moments. I often reflect upon the stories for myself and my family, and you and I have talked about stories of your family through that 2-month journey. And I know that everybody else has those sort of stories as well. And that's, to me, what makes it really special. And you think about, the fans that were at Oracle in the final game at Oracle, and what did they do closing it out singing "Oh Canada"? That was really special.
Listen, I don't want to get caught screaming at you at the very end like I was with Elliot last night. So I think that might be a good way to wrap it up, because it's terrible. It was literally like Elliot was talking, and I don't think it comes up on his screen. So I'm like, 10, 5, bye, Elliot, and that was it was a rather abrupt end.
Alrighty.
But I think we're up against. We only got
Jackson. All right, buddy.
Everybody's good, man. All the best to your family. Thanks for doing this. And again, as I said, I'm hoping we're out of this thing sooner than later. But if this extends longer, you're definitely coming back for episode 2, because there's far, far, far too many stories that we didn't get to. And I know we could wax poetic for hours. So, Maddie, thanks for this. And we got to send a few shout-outs to everybody that's been watching and commenting.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Hey, Bermuda Dave was here.
Was he?
My guy Alan was on here. Sean. I mean, the list goes on. Everybody that was in, folks asking for shout-outs. Thanks so much for joining in. Daniela back for a second straight night. Everybody. So thanks so much, Maddie. And folks, I'm going to be back again tomorrow night. Maddie, you know my guest tomorrow night as well. Christian Stoynev, of course, Christian and Percy, Christian and Scooby from America's Got Talent and all the NBA halftime shows. He's going to come on, so we'll have a little entertainment tomorrow as well. 10 p.m. Eastern, and Maddie will be back one day. Thanks again, Matt, and thanks to everybody watching. All right, folks. See you later.